Welcome back to the show. Today's topic: should women be worship? And depending on what kind of thought process you have, uh, or where you defined it, it could be in public, it could be in private, it could be uh, whatever kind of form, and you could agree or disagree. At this point, it's kind of however you see it. So the reason I chose this topic, there was a picture floating around, and it was a rapper, I guess, and I don't know where from a music video or if it was one of those kind of, I don't know what is tending to be out there, like men showing more of a submissive role, or not being submissive, or not in a submissive role, just being taking pictures in a submissive, subservient position. Now, I don't know this rapper's name. I've never listened to any of his music, so the picture was kind of floating around where his wife, and I did find out that it was his wife, not just like a random chick or like a girlfriend that he just met. So it was actually like his wife, legal wife, the whole 9 yards. Um, so it was, the picture came out and it was him kind of praising her, and she was just standing over him. So of course, just like you would, if it was opposite, you would get an uproar. If it was like a woman in that position to a man, you would have had like the feminists, get all crazy irate about an image like that and what it represented. The same thing kind of happened with, like certain men felt a little bit perturbed by that image, and it gave them a problem, being able to see an image of a man being submissive to a woman. Now, in this case, it's his wife, married, and like I said, the whole 9 yards. So when I found that out, I saw this picture floating around, and it was on certain Facebook groups, and it kept on popping up. So it wasn't just one time, and then it just kept on popping up, like the question, and well, what do you guys think about this kind of and the amount of negativity that, now, again, these are echo chambers that house these kind of, so it's like these echo chambers that that I heard this from, and it was just this, oh, he's a simp, there's no way I would be submissive to my girl, there'll be no way that I would do that. So just the amount of that response, not just in one, it was in several of these Facebook pages, and the amount of just negative response. So at some point, I have a different viewpoint than that, as far as being what it is to be a man. And certain female, maybe because I'm Hispanic, and many women have said, oh, I love Hispanic men because you guys are so romantic, you guys are so affectionate. So maybe it's in my DNA. I don't tend to believe garbage like that, because I believe anyone can be that way if they just choose to. I mentioned in this thread that was developing of, like, man hating, because the man, so I wrote down, that there was nothing wrong with that. There was nothing wrong with a man worshiping a woman, and the amount of response, negative response, uh, that I got towards that was pretty amazing. And at some point during it didn't go viral, at least I don't think, even though screenshots of my convo were then like, oh, look at this king of simps and all that stuff. And I found it very disturbing that that notion of worshiping a woman is so frowned upon. And I get the argument. Now, if again, I kind of started off saying that I knew this man. Well, I found out that this rapper, this was his wife in that picture. And before I made this statement, so I felt pretty comfortable, like just, but it's something I just truly believe. I'm just an affectionate person, and or at least I try to be, for the most part. So I try to understand that I'm coming at it from a whole different viewpoint, even though I am in agreement with the majority of this manosphere stuff, that it's unhealthy to put women on a pedestal, the same way that it's unhealthy for for us to overindulge in anything. So I am completely for that message. But at some point, especially in relationships, it doesn't have to be marriage, but I'm saying in relationships that there's a connection or whatever you want to, there's just a vibe, there's that passion in between there, for a man to become a, not, it's not even about being submissive, it's not about being less than, it's when you just, as the I know there's different definitions to what the word worship is, but to worship the female body when you're in that essence, or if you're in that kind of relationship, or if you're in that kind of situation, for better terms, and then calling them like one night stands, or night of passions, or whatever you want to identify them with, right? Well, at least I don't think so. I'm saying right, like I'm expecting you guys to understand it. I'm trying to prove my point, because the negative part of it was so intense, and coming from men, I could see if it was coming from women. But every time I propose this question to women, of course they're going to want that, because that's what they want. Now, it might be that men are lacking that kind of intensity, that kind of passion, that kind of energy, I guess. But it's just something that I done. So when I posted this, and I posted the thing that there's nothing wrong with worshiping a woman, and the reaction that it responded, I mean, name calling, everything. I was even called like a steroid freak, which was the greatest compliment I think I could have gotten. At least the biggest ego booster that I could get. It's either to my great angles in my camera, or because of the working out that I'm doing. But there is definitely, again, so you don't want to go, and by worshiping, like I said, it's different definition to a lot of people, but it's basically like, to just, I know the main one is like a deity, like in a religious sense, like, like we worship statues, or we worship, God, and stuff like that. But it could be like the worship of the female body. I mean, so anyways, I don't want to get into the definition of, but one of my, there was, so as in this process of them, going, and calling me like, oh, the simp, I'll never do this to any of mine, all these, negative stuff that we're doing. I pointed out that throughout history, this has been the norm, right? That this has been the way human beings, especially man, have done it throughout history. I mean, cults have been derived and around the female body, and it's not even from now, it's from the beginning of when we figured out, like, hey, and whatever your belief system is, it is what it is. But from that moment, whenever that is in your creation story, I'm pretty sure we're like, oh, this looks beautiful, and I'm going to worship it, or I'm going to take care of it, or I'm going to admire it, and I'm going to indulge in it, and and devour it and breathe it. And so it's not until recent that this has become some kind of taboo thing that men are not supposed to do that. Whether there is a correlation with the rise in women's rights and femininity, or not femininity, but feminist movement and the equality, there is, it is what it is. It's gonna happen. I think I talked about it in another podcast where this is just the way we're doing, and the way those comments were coming off is just another clear indication, as men and the message that they're hearing, because they're so detached from the reality of what is out there, what's the truth, because we want to, get in these echo chambers that tell us, yeah, don't bow down to no women, don't be a simp. And again, there is a lot of truth to that, and don't let no, but that's just common knowledge. Like, don't let anybody take advantage of you. We focus on females, but friends take advantage of us, family take advantage of us. So many people, work takes advantage of us, but we want to focus on the female and they're the enemies, and don't do this, don't do that. But, and again, to some extent, that is definitely true. You don't want to do that to everyone you meet and everyone you come across. That's just a lot of emotion given away for free that you don't want to. But when you find someone, there is no shame in saying, look, I do this. And I'm not saying because you don't do certain things that you don't love or admire the woman's body, the mind, whatever. I'm not saying that. You can do that. I'm saying that what I'm trying to say or come across is that it's okay to be able to be vocal and say, no, there's nothing wrong with worshiping a woman, especially when that woman is your wife and is taking vows and is loyal and is honest and whatever, your standards and boundaries. If she's meeting them and exceeding them, are you going to tell me you're not going to go above and beyond if she's keeping herself fit, if she's keeping herself, a certain way for you, and if, everything is fun, everything is effortless, everything is going, you telling me you're not going to do that? You're not going to go above and beyond and start worshiping her a little bit, start showing gratitude a little bit more, start showing a little bit more affection? That's what I mean by worshiping her. That's saying that you're not your own man. It's saying that when you are in the comfort, again, I'm going to go into the comfort of your own home, but it's actually to where the comfort of your relationship is. And if you want to do it outside and do that whole PDA thing, I'm not a fan of it, but if that's you, go do you. But I'm saying it's okay to do it. If in this instance, for that picture, I found nothing wrong with it being your wife. And even in that, when that, not me, other people saw my reaction, my response, and then they saw me getting piled on, and then they came in and started saying, like, it's his wife, and making the point that I was doing. And little by little, that conversation ended up more and more people agreeing with my position and saying, of course, this is not what men do. We don't sit there and see the woman, and say, oh, yeah, we're not going to worship her. Oh, we're not going to admire her. We're not going to see and enjoy the beauty, when that's all we know. That's what, the $1 trillion industry, or at least in the billions, dating and relationships. So miss me with all that stuff about we shouldn't this or we shouldn't that, because that's what we've known. That's what we've programmed. Not from TV and society. It's just the way nature makes it. It gives them certain features that to us make them attractive. It doesn't give us the same features for a certain reason. I mean, it does some men and it does some women, of course. There's always variations. But for the most part, we are created to attract one another. That's as basic as it can be. And again, I get the argument where, yes, you shouldn't do certain things because, yes, there's evil people out there and there's evil women out there, and they will take advantage of you, and they will take your money, and they will take your attention, and they will take, yes, I get it, they will take. But living that way is a lot more exhausting than just being you and understanding that there's nothing wrong. again, if it's not for you, to admire, to just, and I'm not saying dishing out money, because the picture, it was just him bowing to her and they were in a bedroom setting. So it was more of a romantic kind of a thing where he was gonna make her the priority. He was gonna worship her body. He was gonna worship, enjoy every touch, every feel, kind of that way. The way it was perceived by men my age and younger was scary. Older generation in my age, there were still, and again, my age is the cutoff because that's where I'm using it right now as an example, is being 40 years old, and cut off from up, they understood it perfectly because that's what they were raised on. That's what, generation upon generation of men have been raised on. Yes, having, understanding responsibility, being focused and all that stuff, but understanding at the end of the day, that's your queen, that's your princess, that's whatever the hell you want to call her. But at the end of the day, that's your partner going through with you, or chosen to go with you. And we could scale it down to a girlfriend, and it doesn't have to be like no 2-3 year girlfriend. Look, at some point, some people come in our life for certain reasons, for who knows what. But if that's what you choose to do, it should be okay for you to be able to do that and understand that that's just nature. And every time you fight against it, every time you tell yourself, "Oh no, I can't because I'm making myself weak," you're going against your very nature of who you're supposed to be. You're supposed to be a man. You're supposed to be, direct and decisive with what you want. And if that's something that you want to do, if you want to worship a woman because you want her to look good, you want her to have money, you want her to be okay. I'm not saying do this to a girl you're not getting anything from, and she puts you off to the side. I'm talking about those girls that are loyal, those ones that are there on, by your side. And if you and again, if you taking it one step further, if it's just who you are and you have expendable income, I've said it before, I have no problem with you doing you because you obviously earned it. You earned the right to fuck off some money. Would I advise it? Probably not. But I'm not dumb enough to say, "Oh, you shouldn't," because if more men would put in a position where they were financially or whatever place they could afford it, they would simp out even more. And if OnlyFans is any indication of that, and I hate using simp in that way without any time. I think every episode I've ever used those fucking words. I've used disclaimer. I use those words because that's what people use. I always call it a negative, negative energy. And in the simp thing, without getting too digressed, in that simp thing is just negative energy that has to be, you have to connect that energy to something. And sometimes we connect it to addiction, sometimes we addicted to sex, sometimes we addicted to being liked, whatever it is. And in certain instance that is linked to a virtual, to someone outside that we know we can't get, but that little spark of hope kind of keeps us, going. That's why strip clubs are so, popular, and that's why, like, call girls are popular depending on what city, even though it's probably in all cities, and certain things are like that. It's just because that's the way, fucking program. But anyways, so it's become this kind of, like I said, this almost like emasculating kind of a situation where if you just say, "Oh no, there's nothing wrong with admiring women, with loving women, with making sure, with enjoying women," that somehow makes you less than, what a man is supposed to be. I mean, I've already said it before. I don't follow, when all these life coaches and dating coaches use, like, fictional characters that never existed to show some kind of macho bravado example. And most of the time, these guys were written by, like, the most, left wing people, or people that they wouldn't associate, but yet they're using the characters that they know what men idolize to be, not what actually, men are. But look at our history. Whatever it is, Greek, Mesoamerican, Chinese. Look at what the woman and what the woman has meant to men's history, and how it's just, no matter what, presidents, kings, through history and coming histories and futures and whatever, that the women have influence, whether we want to admit it or not. And the way modern times are going, I get it, equality, but it doesn't have to be that way. And that's why some of the stuff that women say that, yeah, I wish men would be more men, because we're more timid because they're making more money. And because they're making more money, we can't take the lead, where it doesn't have to be that way. We have to understand that women are going to make more. We have to allow certain things, like the episode that I made is like, letting women spoil you. But, so we have to adapt to just a new way of doing it. But certain things that they do want is like, that picture was trying to explain, is this kind of affection and reaction or devotion to your woman. But yet in many circles, and especially in this quote unquote manosphere, that action was looked at as a very, negative move and a simpy mood, and something that a beta cuck does and a beta male does. And again, the terminology, I'm not gonna anyway, you could Google what they mean. Again, negative energy to me, just negative energy. But because no one would understand it, that's the only way. But that image right there of a man, in a praising position to a woman over him, led to such a negative reaction, where, hey, look, they're going to make more money. It's going to be intimidating, yes. But as men, we still have to be assertive. We still have to be, on our P's and Q's. We have to, of course, strive and whatnot. It's just not the time right now to be in this whole, like, it's not going to happen. I get it. Still men out earn women and all that stuff. And of course, because there's just more of us in the workforce, but more women. And just take it from someone that's in the dating market. I have met more women making six figures than I think I've ever met any men around my circles that have made those solid six figures, like I have with women over women over women over women. So that's just telling me, at least here on the West Coast, that the women are going to, if not already, out earning men. And men have to just become more, understanding of what, not only what we want. That's great that we're understanding more of what men want, standards, boundaries, greatness, achieving, goal orientated, all that, rah rah, let's be men, stuff. But it's also important to understand what women want, and to stop them from progressing from women and making salaries and being CEOs and all that stuff. That's gonna always lead to anger and frustration, because that's just not what's going. We could talk about the past, we could go in the good old days, but that's not what's going. And we could sit here and bash people, well, you have to go back to the old way of thinking, or else you're going to be lonely and single, which is not the case. The part is that women still want the same thing in before. And like I said before in the spoiling part podcast or episode, is that they don't have a problem spending money. What they want is the dominance. What they want is the devotion. What they want is the worship, because they put so much effort into looking beautiful that they want you to adore them. They want you to be able to worship them. And that's in many instances, not only in the bedroom, it's when they put effort into their quote unquote clown makeup, as I hear it described in the manosphere, with their freaking flapping eyebrows. They want to be like, oh, you look gorgeous, or you look beautiful. When they feel, bad, or they feel a little bit overweight, because they, oh no, you've never looked better. But yet in certain areas, more common than I choose to understand why, that's a simping move. That's a negative move. You're not allowed to do that. You shouldn't do that, because it makes you look weak. Oh, you're validating her. Oh, you're doing, and you're gonna get curved, and that's why you get friend zoned. And that, no. None of that's true. Everything that you doing, none of that makes you feel like you're be neglectful. You're not paying attention. You're not attentive to details. You're in it only for other reasons. You're just leaving it out for her to paint whatever it is. And that's what's lacking. It's not because they're out earning. It's not because we're being, yes, the feeling emasculated, and, oh, they're making more and I can't afford this. again, it's all that self-talk that we want to justify why we're not having success, or why it didn't work out, or why that is not damn knowing well that it bothered you, but it doesn't bother her. And the where they want is in certain instances, and in worship, I know in our mind it takes us to right to the bedroom, or being a simp for most men. Like, oh, you have to buy all this stuff, you have to do all this stuff. And if that is you, if you have to buy all this stuff and do all this stuff, there's no shame in that. Do you, if you can afford it and it doesn't leave you broke. But it could mean a lot of things. And to women, it means the most when you figure out what those things are. And that's why if I played this to women, they would be like, yes, oh, that's exactly what we want, but where do we find this? And if I played this to men, it would be like, oh, he's the king of simps. The same thing that happened, it blew up, and it was just in a negative way. King of simps, because there's this disconnect, and that was the most obvious, not big, I should say obvious, the most shocking part to me, where I wasn't even thinking about going down this route and talking about, this subject as far as worshiping women and stuff like that, but just the reaction to that picture and the reaction to my message after, again, it was layer after layer of simp, he's a simp, oh, I lost respect for this rapper, I'm never listening to his music no more. Just mountains of all of this kind of stuff. And when I said, dude, there's nothing wrong with worshiping a woman, and then how that comment blew up by itself, as far as like how I was now being called a simp, king of simps, and using as a meme and all this stuff, again, it just shows the disconnect between men and women nowadays, where there has to be better communication, there has to be better knowledge, there has to be a better way for both sides to come together again. And that's just recognizing that that's the way we've been programmed. It's okay to adore women. It's okay to love women. It's okay to show devotion and worship to a woman, to the woman body, to the woman physique. That's what makes everything so, gorgeous for us. It's everywhere. I mean, even now, we've evolved to it now where we're becoming numb to it, but many of us could admire a female body. And we worship it in our mind, but now because the message is that equality, and because everything is changing and it's harder for me because this and that, all these excuses. So then we turn that into this kind of, oh, it's us against them, when it shouldn't be. It's us against us. And they're there just to as it's being said, they're just there. Not just there, but they're there to add as an addition to our life. But just because they're there as an addition to our lives doesn't mean we don't worship them. We don't respect them. We don't treat them like queens. We don't show them devotion. We don't show them worship. We don't show them admiration. That's all they ask of us. And I don't really think that's a lot. So not all. I know some, yes, gold diggers and all that stuff, negative apples. There's some dicks. There's some assholes in our end too. So again, we have to go back to it's okay. Read some cults about some ancient cults about the worship of women, and that's what we need to get into, to let women get in tune with their femininity. And even though maybe it's not our responsibility, but as men, when we notice women getting away from their femininity, we as men have to lead them the way. And it doesn't say we have to negate them any rights. We have to fully accept the fact that this is the way it is. Women are on the rise. But yet, just because they're losing some of the feminine energy doesn't mean that they are the enemy. It just means that they're losing their way. It also doesn't mean that we can guide them by not force, not taking away their rights, not going back to the kitchen and cooking me meals and having my babies. It's by start giving them different experiences when they come across us, to give them that future hope that, yeah, you know what, if I become more feminine, this happens. And this man, and get this, the way of men interacting with women, as opposed to expecting women to somehow change the way they've been and interactive and are leading and are forecasted to be for us to wish that stop and for them to turn around, it's a fool's game. It's not going to. So it's up to us to adapt. And one of those ways to adapt is by worshiping women. And that's nothing new. It's something that was done before. And it's something that we need to get back to. So I hope I made you guys think. Like the channel, subscribe to the channel, share the video. Thank you guys for listening. Until next time.